Even though it will take some time for the people of Middle-earth to vanquish Sauron, Celebrimbor has optimism for the future and believes that he will eventually fall. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Celebrimbor dies in the Season 2 finale of The Rings of Power, but not before he correctly predicts Sauron's fate. In the Lord of the Rings series on Amazon, Celebrimbor has some of the most moving moments when he defeats Sauron and faces the Dark Lord. Celebrimbor correctly points out that Sauron is lying to himself about having saved Middle-earth. Additionally, he predicts Sauron's fate with uncanny accuracy, speculating that a particular ring will ultimately lead to the villain's demise. Hear the dying words of Celebrimbor. Charles Edwards' character tells Sauron in the Season 2 conclusion of The Rings of Power, "You will be destroyed by the Rings of Power, and ultimately I predict that only one will demonstrate your complete failure." Naturally, the One Ring is being discussed by the Lord of Eregion in this sentence, even if it isn't real at this point in the story. Even so, Celebrimbor predicts the Lord of the Rings conclusion accurately, and that's sufficient to momentarily unsettle the antagonist of the Rings of Power. Celebrimbor of the Rings of Power predicts that one ring will bring down Sauron. He predicts the Lord of the Rings events accurately, putting the One Ring on and dressing Sauron in armor in the Fellowship of the Ring. The One Ring does ultimately demonstrate Sauron's demise, since, in the Second Age, losing it to Isildur causes him to momentarily lose his power, and in the Third Age, Frodo destroys it to finally bring Sauron to an end. In The Rings of Power Season 2, Sauron spends a significant portion of the adventure tricking Celebrimbor into creating the other Rings of Power. Therefore, the One Ring isn't there yet. But Sauron invests much of his strength in the ring he eventually makes, the one that will govern them all. This demonstrates that he made a costly error earlier and during the Lord of the Rings. As Celebrimbor foretells at the conclusion of The Rings of Power Season 2, Sauron dies when the One Ring activates, since he has tied his might to it. Celebrimbor's prediction of Sauron's downfall makes sense, since he aids in the start of the villain's conquest via the Rings of Power. And despite the fact that fans would be perplexed as to how Celebrimbor was able to predict Sauron's destiny with such clarity, his parting remarks make sense given how closely the two collaborated in the earlier episodes. How Celebrimbor is aware of Sauron's future events. In the second season of The Rings of Power, the characters collaborate closely. Celebrimbor's last remarks to Sauron are unsettlingly true, yet they make sense in the context of Season 2 of The Rings of Power. Sauron works closely with Celebrimbor to manufacture the 9 rings for men and the 7 rings for dwarves after disguising himself as Anatar. These characters come to know one another throughout their time together at Celebrimbor's forge. Before Celebrimbor ever discovers the villain's true identity, he discovers exactly how Sauron thinks. It follows that the Lord of Eregion's ability to foresee Sauron's future move should come as no surprise. Celebrimbor believes in the elves and all the races of Middle-earth, yet he is also able to read Sauron's intents. Throughout the Season 2 finale, he repeatedly demonstrates this point by professing hope, despite knowing that he would ultimately perish. Even though it will take some time for the people of Middle-earth to vanquish Sauron, Celebrimbor has optimism for the future and believes that he will eventually fall. Furthermore, by foreseeing the villain's schemes, he is able to get insight into the possible course of events, creating a scenario that has similarities to the return of the king. Celebrimbor had already foreseen that Sam and Frodo would rescue Middle-earth. They are the light to which the Lord of Eregion alludes. Celebrimbor's vision of the future references Frodo and Sam's adventure thousands of years before the Lord of the Rings, in addition to foretelling Sauron's demise. Celebrimbor informs Galadriel that light triumphs over all other forces during their farewell. He asserts that light will triumph over darkness in Middle-earth, implying that armies will not be able to do so. Furthermore, every figure that resists Sauron in the Second and Third Ages possesses the light he speaks of. It's a light that gives Frodo and Sam the opportunity to finally defeat the evil. The Lord of the Rings shows us that Sam and Frodo defeat Sauron without the use of armies or brute force. Instead, the adversary is caught off guard by their bravery, which ultimately leads them to destroy the One Ring, even in the face of overwhelming odds. This conclusion is set up by Celebrimbor's statement in Season 2 of The Rings of Power, which foretells both Sam and Frodo's victory and the conclusion of Sauron's tale. The Amazon series neatly ties everything together, so it's a shame that it won't have a direct connection to the Lord of the Rings adaptations.